Welcome to the Teachers Talkin' podcast, hosted by Dustin and Ghazali Abdul Wahab. In this podcast, we discuss all things education and teaching, from innovative teaching methods to challenges to strategies and much, much more. In this discussion or roundtable-based podcast, we bring in educators from all around the world to talk about a variety of education topics so that we can support as many teachers as possible. We want this to be a place of inspiration, personal and professional development, and simply a place where we can elevate education together. Welcome to Teachers Talkin'. Welcome to this episode of Teachers Talkin'. As always, I'm Dustin. I'm here with my co-host Ghazali, and we are absolutely thrilled to have today's guest, Joe Dale, an independent language consultant and tech expert here with us. Joe has worked with a wide range of organizations globally and is a recognized leader in integrating technology into language education. And he's here to share his insights on using AI in the language classroom. So today we're really going to be focusing on how AI can enhance language learning. So we're going to dive into some practical strategies that teachers can use to bring AI into their classroom. So Joe, why don't you kick us off? Tell us a little bit about yourself and just the work that you've been doing with AI to make an impact in the language learning space.
I'd be absolutely welcome. Fantastic. Before I quickly get into that, Ghazali, can you mute yourself when you're not speaking? Because I can hear the sound. Is that okay? Right. Fantastic. Well, it's amazing to be on your podcast. I'm a big fan of podcasts. And in fact, I started podcasting back in 2006. There we are. So it's been one of my passions for a long time. So my background is I'm an EdTech consultant, basically focusing on world language education, modern foreign languages, as we describe it in the UK. As you can hear, I'm from the UK from my accent. I've been a consultant for about 15 years now. Prior to that, I was a languages teacher for 13 years, teaching French at secondary school level for 3 years, and then 10 years at middle school level, working with 9 to 13-year-olds on the Isle of Wight, which is where I live, which is, if you don't know, it's an island just south of Southampton, where the Titanic left in 1912. And that's about 25 minutes away via ferry from Southampton to where I live. And I've been doing work with organizations and departments and different people all over the world for many years. Before the pandemic, I was traveling to lots of places like Australia and America, to the Middle East, all over Europe, South America, etc. But as a result of the pandemic and Brexit as well, I tend to do most of my training online now, although I do regularly go to Dublin to do training sessions with normally English teachers, but sometimes across the curriculum from all over Europe. And for the last year and a half, last 2 years or so, my big focus has been on how AI can enhance not only language learning, but teaching and learning in general. But my sort of bread and butter is working with language teachers to see how AI can help with that. And I'm literally doing webinars and talks all over the world, live from my study on the Isle of Wight, which is a lot of fun.
Wow, that sounds awesome. You have such a wealth of experience. And of course, today, finally, we get to talk about my favorite topic, AI. And we're talking with somebody who knows a lot about AI. So I just can't wait. You can tell the excitement from my voice, right? Yeah. So, Joe, going to go off script a bit here. You know about the latest, ChatGPT. The OpenAI just dropped the latest version of ChatGPT. It's supposed to be the next big thing. It's so smart. It can reason. It can think logically, right? I just want to pick your brains, from educator to an educator. Have you tried out this new model, and what do you think about it?
So I haven't tried it out. It's literally, I think it's the last couple of days it's come out. It's 1.0, I think. So presumably the O still stands for Omni. Is that right?
I think it stands for Orion, but it doesn't really matter. They're just starting the number back again because they say this is something revolutionary, it's something new. We got to start back to 1.
Okay. So my understanding from what I've read about it is that, as you say, it's much better at reasoning. I think it's better at spelling. The meme that's going around at the moment is ask ChatGPT to spell strawberry, or how many R's are in strawberry.
I love
Apparently,
that.
yeah, apparently it's better at doing that as well. In relation to that, apparently if you spell out the word strawberry, so if you say strawberry, Strawberry, it's more likely to get the correct answer. So it's all to do with the idea of tokens and the fact that it can understand parts of words as well as whole words. And so it's just not, it can't necessarily work out the number of R's in a particular word unless you spell out the individual letters, and therefore with the token system it can then work it out, so it's more likely to get the correct answer. So I was reading a post I think today saying for all those people that in their presentations, if they're an edtech consultant, for example, talking about AI, that it can't do maths, then maybe you need to rethink that now. But as I said, I haven't had time to actually try it out myself. Of course I will. I presume that anyone that has a premium account with ChatGPT gets access to it. Is it only premium users? Is that right, Ghazali? Do you know?
Yes. Yep. It's only premium users. I thought I was going to sign up. I thought this was the thing that was going to make me sign up to ChatGPT. But then I found out, even though you sign up, you only get 30 tries, 30 messages, and it's not a day, it's a week. A week. Joe, we are not rich educators here. We are earning a living, and then it's just 30 messages a week. I don't know. Do you think it's worth it for that amount?
That's a great question. I think it's definitely worth it for me to have the premium version of ChatGPT 4.0. And occasionally, if I'm going crazy on prompt chaining or just experimenting, I can actually hit that limit, which is quite hard to do with 4.0 because you get a lot of messages that you can send. But very occasionally, that does happen. But I suppose with anything, it's working out what it can do. My understanding, again, from what I've read, is that it's slower as a model compared to ChatGPT 4.0. So yeah, I can't really talk to that exactly in the sense that I've not tried it out myself. But I think that presumably it uses more computational power, and therefore it would be too expensive for OpenAI to have more than, let's say, 30 messages a week. I wasn't actually aware that it was only 30 messages a week. So that must be frustrating for you, Ghazali, for sure.
Yes, definitely. I mean, I want to try to do all sorts of things with it, to find out how good is it. Apparently, this is the model which hits PhD level expertise for math and science, right? So I really want to know how does it help language teachers like us? Because although it hits those math and science benchmarks, really, really high, but I heard that it is not as good as GPT-4 Omni in terms of language, which is weird. You make a model that can think better, reason better, and its language like sort of declines a little bit. Well, what do you think about that?
Well, of course, I suppose because of the fact that my domain, your domain is language teaching, I'm trying to focus on what ChatGPT 4.0 can do, because obviously that's where the interest is. That's what we want to show to different people, for example. And one of the features which I particularly like in 4.0 is the way in which you can ask ChatGPT to generate a downloadable Word document or a downloadable PDF or a downloadable Excel document, for example. So with different ideas that I've shared previously in webinars, etc., I can now, as a result of that update, I can now take it to a new level. So what I mean by that, for example, is one of my favorite ways of using ChatGPT is in relation to Google Earth projects. So with a Google Earth project, what you can do is you can generate a KML file, which is the format that you need to import into Google Earth to create a project. And what I used to do in a webinar series that I ran twice last year, once in January of this year, was to show people how to create the block code in ChatGPT, copy that code, put it into a tool like Notepad, but instead of saving it as a text file, saving it as a KML file. So literally you just put .kml on the end, save that, and then you can import that into Google Earth projects. But now with this new feature in ChatGPT, this new functionality, you can not only ask it to do what I was asking it to do, e.g., create a KML file mapping 10 famous places in Paris, for example, and give a description in A1 level French with 4 multiple choice questions where 1 is the correct answer. And it can do all of that, but now you can ask it to create a downloadable KML file as well. So in other words, you've cut out one of the steps. You don't have to then copy and paste it into Notepad or text edit, which would be the equivalent for Mac, and then save that as a KML file and import it. So it's just saved a step. And then likewise with creating worksheets or lesson plans, as we know, ChatGPT could do that very well. You can now say, once you've made the, let's say the worksheet, you can then say, turn this into a downloadable Word document, and then it's all there. And that normally goes down really, really well with teachers, you can imagine, when I show them that.
Yes, that's a very good example, creating the lesson plans. I also came across a post somewhere today talking about lesson plans, saying that, if you use all these tools to create your lesson plans, are you then, dumbing down the critical thinking of teachers when they don't have to design their own lesson plan? So how then do we balance things out, using technology, but at the same time, not allowing this cognitive atrophy to take place?
So I hear that question a lot, as you can imagine, and I love the whole cognitive atrophy term that I first heard from you from the NIE Singapore webinar that I watched recently that you took part in, which I thought was absolutely fantastic, by the way. I mean, I watch a lot of webinars, and sometimes after about 10 minutes, I think, oh, this is a waste of my time. I know all of this already, but I learned a lot in yours, particularly in your particular contribution, Ghazali.
Thank you so much.
So yeah, in relation to lesson planning, or the whole argument around cognitive atrophy, to me it's the opposite. What I think that ChatGPT and other large language models are very good at are rewording your ideas. So if you, for example, put in a general prompt, as you know, you're going to get a general response. But in that general response, there might be one idea that suddenly sparks something in your brain, reminding you of what you did, let's say 5 years ago, and then it sends you down a certain avenue in your thinking process, and that's incredibly useful. Or if you put in a more detailed prompt and you get a detailed response, you might think, well, okay, that idea I don't like, but that idea, that's really good. And then you go into more detail, or you ask for a real world example for that particular idea, and it feels like ChatGPT is sort of, sucking it up, just loves it. I know it's not emotional, but maybe it's that, I don't know, that interaction you're having. You're using it as a sounding board, as a thinking body. So of course you've got to check everything for accuracy, for bias, and all these other things that we hear a lot about when we're talking about AI. But to me, it's the opposite. It's actually channeling my creativity. It's actually boosting my critical thinking skills, because of course you've got to analyze exactly what it's coming up with. And yes, some of the answers can be quite generic, but it can give you that really nice kernel of an idea, which you can then explore in more detail and essentially ask ChatGPT to not really give you ideas, because it can't think, but what it can do is it can be very good at rewording or repackaging your ideas so they then sound better. And what I find again is I find it's very easy for me to think to myself, okay, I like that idea, but I really don't like that idea. So in other words, I find ChatGPT is a great way of identifying what I don't like, but highlighting what I do like.
Okay, so you've just opened a can of worms here. We're going to go down this rabbit hole. Are you ready for this question? I get this a lot at many of the conferences and workshops, so I need a good answer for this. So maybe you can help me. So because I'm going to be attending another workshop, and I know this question will come out again. You just mentioned something just now that sounded very interesting, right? You said that ChatGPT cannot think. Those were your words, right? Okay. At the same time, OpenAI just released this new model, which says is the latest, is the best, it's very good at logic and reasoning. So can you explain to our listeners, right? How can something that cannot think have expert PhD level reasoning and logic at the same time? How does this work? And at the same time, perhaps you can explain this concept that they talk about in the literature about ChatGPT being just a stochastic parrot.
Great questions. Okay, so my understanding from the way that AI works, or the way that large language models work, is that you have to input into them huge data sets. So once you've put in those data sets, when you put in a prompt, it will then scan its database. The LLM will scan its database, finding patterns in what it is that you've asked it. So again, the more precise the prompt, the better. And then it tries to, having matched those patterns, it then tries to give you, based on presumably the computational power that it has, to give you the best fit based on what you've asked it. So to me, that's not thinking, that's rewording what other people have said. Therefore, if now with, let's say, 1.0, that its ability to reason and use logic is better, I presume that must be based on the way in which the model deals with logic and reasoning, because of the very clever people that have helped to design it, much more clever than I am, and therefore it then has that ability. But my basic understanding of this is that it's searching its database, finding patterns, and then it regurgitates that based on your prompt. So the fact now it can be better in reasoning, etc., must be to do with these very clever people who have then added that new functionality. And it's very easy, even in 4.0, to get ChatGPT to sort of stumble and to struggle with very simple maths problems. For example, if you were to say, if a man had 4 apples and ate 2 apples, how many apples would he have left? And it might get it right, but it probably won't get it right. Or if you say, can you now replicate or create another problem of a similar type and then solve that as well, probably it will get it wrong. And I've actually tried that myself. And likewise with the whole spelling of strawberry, it's the same sort of thing. So it's great news, I think, to hear that it's now better at using logic, using reasoning. But I would still say it's not thinking, really. It's really just using its powerful database and the functionality that it has in order to solve a particular problem that it's been set. But my understanding again is that there are lots of people who simply don't know how exactly a large language model works and can't actually identify exactly how it works. So sometimes it will create something which is surprising even to them. So that's why it's fascinating, I think.
Yes, that's where we hear things about emergent skills or emergent behaviors, or it seems to create something new, and that is the thing that that amazes people. Is it creating something new, or do you think it's already in its training database and we don't know about it? So when it mentions it, it becomes something new. But at the same time, you hear in the news that AI has created new proteins, is now doing research work, on its own, coming up with new knowledge. So that's the problem. So I can't seem to marry these two ideas together, that it is just a stochastic parrot based on previous data that has been trained, and at the same time it seems to be creating new things, it being creative in that sense. Yeah, so these two things doesn't gel well, and then some people who are defending it says that patterns, isn't that how our brain thinks, is creating new knowledge through old patterns? In other words, what we call patterns are actually experiences. Yeah, so that's how we internalize the knowledge in our minds and make sense of things. So is the AI doing something that is actually very human-like, or even, since it's this way of thinking allows it to beat the best chess players in the world, the best Go players in the world, maybe it's even a better way of thinking in that sense? What's your opinion?
Fantastic question. I agree with the paradox. I think to answer a very explicit question around chess, my understanding is that the reason that for the last 30 years, I think it's been, that large language models can beat a grandmaster is the fact that, again, every single move, every single computation of different moves in chess have been fed into the large language model. Deep Blue, I think it was called. And as a result of that, it can then beat anybody because it can see X number of moves ahead. It knows exactly what's going to happen, irrespective of how the other person plays. So I think that would explain how a large language model can beat even the best in the world at chess, but also all those actors and people that work in the entertainment business in Hollywood, for example, who are saying this is not creating anything new. All that AI is doing is regurgitating old ideas, which is essentially, what you're saying, or understanding from what you're saying. And of course, the idea of artificial intelligence, it's supposed to be mirroring the way that the human brain works. So to go back to my previous answer, to me, it seems to be my understanding of this. It seems to be that it is drawing on different patterns. So it is, in a sense, regurgitating content, but through the process of prompting, it can inspire new ideas in the user and can send the user down new avenues. But because all the data which is being put into the large language model by the users, that's obviously all being sent to the large language model to train the bot, whatever that means. And therefore, if you've got people who are putting in innovative prompts, innovative ideas that maybe other people haven't thought about previously, or it's on the cutting edge, a new development has come out, people are using prompts to work out how best to use the new idea in education, for example. Just to give you an example of that, I'm sure you've seen about the new audio overview feature in Notebook LM, the way in which you can upload a PDF, for example, of an article or a web link, and it will then create for you this very human-like podcast interview output with a male and a female podcaster talking about the particular subject. Now, I tried this out yesterday, the Google Earth idea. Well, similar idea, actually. There's also a way of, you can ask ChatGPT 4o to plot different points in a map using what's called OpenStreetMap. And I've written about this. I was inspired by an educator in London, William Van Rake, I think you pronounce it, who works in a school in London. And he first mentioned this, and I thought that's really interesting. I could apply that to languages. So I worked out how to generate different pins on a map with different descriptions, and then how to create multiple choice questions similar to the Google Earth project I was talking about, and then how to export that in a list, which I could then turn into an interactive Google quiz using Brisk. And so I turned that copy, which is in my Facebook group, Language Teaching with AI, there we are, the first plug today, and turned that into a PDF, uploaded it into Notebook LM, which I had never used before. I'd heard of it before. I thought it was actually US only, but then I realized you could access it from the UK. And I turned it into an 8-minute podcast interview between this male and female podcaster. And my plan at some point over the weekend is to make a screencast of what it looks like, the output, and then write a blog post about it. So that was really interesting. So the reason I'm mentioning that is because I went on to Perplexity and I said, have you heard about the audio overview option in Notebook LM? And of course it says, yes, of course I do. And then gave me various links. And I then, got a good idea of how to do it. And then I just went from there. So to me, it's got to be, well, I was going to say it's got to be that it can't think that all the input that it's getting, even, the absolutely up-to-date input from users, it must be using that to be thinking, or to regurgitate, thinking in inverted commas, to regurgitate answers based on the content in its database. That's what I think anyway, but I may be wrong.
All right, that's an awesome answer. So you've mentioned a lot of things, Perplexity, Brisk, right? So maybe our audiences would like to know, if you're in the field of language teaching, what are the best and also easiest tools for teachers who are not IT savvy to use to augment their pedagogy in the classroom? What would you recommend? This is what we call an AI stack. Yeah. So what is an AI stack for teachers that you would recommend? Some of them.
Okay, that's a huge question, and that's obviously the bread and butter of what I've been doing recently. But let me share with you some of my favorite ones, or the ones that normally go down very well with the audience. So to go into more detail with Brisk, so Brisk Teaching, to give it its full name, is a free Chrome extension which works in conjunction with G Suite, and therefore what it can do, for example, is you can install it. A little Brisk icon appears bottom right of the screen. You could go to, for example, a Google Doc, and you could click on that icon. It will then give you different options, such as creating a quiz, creating a presentation, giving feedback, and so on and so forth. One of the things I tend to do a lot of is I tend to copy and paste, let's say, a set of different questions, multiple choice questions, into a Google Doc. And then I can click on the Brisk Teaching extension, click on Create Quiz, choose to make a Google quiz, and it will then convert that into a self-marking Google quiz with the title which I put in, the 4 possible answers with the questions, and it will identify the correct answer as well. And it will also add 1 point per question, which you can imagine is a great time saver. But I also show how you can turn that into a Microsoft quiz as well, because you always get those people who are saying, well, what about the Microsoft equivalent? So what I do is, having copied and pasted the content into the Google Doc, or by clicking on the new doc option, when you click on the create quiz option in Brisk, you can actually have the questions import into the Google Doc Live. All you have to do is make sure they're in the right format. So you need to make sure that it says the number plus the question. You don't have to have it saying literally the word question and then the number and then the actual question. I always use find and replace to remove the word question. So you need to have the number, then the question itself, and then underneath that, the 4 possible answers, let's say A, B, C, D. So literally it will write A, B, C, D. You need to make sure that format is correct. You then have a space, and then you put in the number 2, the next question, and so on and so forth. And once it's in that correct format, you can have a title as well if you want to. What I do is I go to File, Download, and I choose a Microsoft Word document. Having done that, I will then save that to my desktop, for example, and then I go to the Microsoft Form site using an Office 365 subscription. I click on the quick import option, upload the Word document, and then it will then ask me to choose either a Microsoft quiz or a Microsoft form. I choose Microsoft quiz, click on that, it will then convert it. It will then say start review. I click on start review, and then what I have to do is I have to then go through and make sure that everything is correct. But more importantly, as opposed to a Google quiz, which says what the correct answer is and allocates 1 point, you have to do that bit manually with a Microsoft quiz. So you just have to go through, check for accuracy, click on each one, select what the correct answer is, and then add 1 point, 2 points, etc. per answer. And then once you've done that, it's as per normal. You click on the collect responses option. Anyone can respond, or anyone in your organization. Choose the short URL if you want to, and then share that with the students, and then they can do the quiz, and then all the answers will appear on the form. Likewise with a Google quiz, you do the same thing, and you can export as a Google Sheet or export as a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. So that normally goes down really well. But with Brisk, in addition to that, another feature which people seem to really like is you can also go to a YouTube clip, click on the Brisk Teaching option, and create a multiple choice quiz based on a YouTube clip. So for language teaching, that's fantastic for listening comprehension practice, for example. Were you going to say something, Ghazali?
Yes, I was going to say that is my favorite feature.
Amazing. But also, in addition to that, people seem to really like the ability for Brisk to create a Google Slides presentation as well. In the free version, you don't get images, but you can always use a Google Slides extension, such as Unsplash Images, which allows you to then just draw on all the different images you get with Unsplash and just import them in. So it takes a bit more work, but you can do that completely for free. And then, of course, you can download the results as a Microsoft PowerPoint if you want to as well. So you would just need any sort of, let's say, personal Gmail account. You could then create the content and download the results as a PowerPoint. So even if you're in a Microsoft environment, as long as you have a Gmail account, you can still create presentations using the power of Brisk.
And what you have just described, is it in the free version, everything?
So that's always the question I get asked. So yes, all of that you can do completely for free. And in addition to that, with Brisk, another nice feature is the way in which you can change the level of a text, similar to Diffit, which is another tool I'd highly recommend as well. The way in which you can create graded readers of different websites or YouTube clips or your own text if you want to. And so with that feature in Brisk, you can change the level from, say, grade 10 to grade 3, for example. And even if the grade 3 may not exactly match the age of the students you want to use that text with, it'll give you an indication of the level of language that it would create. And therefore, you can then decide as a professional whether that level is right. So I wouldn't be put off by the fact that if it says grade 3, grade 2, but the level is still too hard, you can still adapt that accordingly. In fact, what I tend to do with Brisk in that context is I will put the text into Brisk as the prompt. So when you click, for example, change level, actually put the text in the prompt, in the little prompt window that you get, and then it will do, I think, a better job. Or with Diffit, which is diffit.me, instead of choosing, let's say, the grade level, you can choose the option to keep original, and therefore it won't change that level of text which maybe you've written yourself or you've asked ChatGPT to create it, but it will do all the other functions that Diffit can do, e.g. creating a summary, creating different keywords with a sentence in context, which I really like, multiple choice questions, short answer questions, and so on and so forth. So again, all of that you can do completely for free. And then a third one that always goes down really well is Mizu, which I know you know about as well, Ghazali. I'm a big fan of Mizu in the sense that it is COPPA, FERPA, and GDPR compliant, and it says really clearly in their children's privacy policy that they won't sell the student data, that they won't put adverts onto the website, and so on and so forth. And essentially, for those people that don't know Mizu, it's just a great solution to be able to practice conversational language, role plays, etc., independently at home, at school, wherever you have access to an internet connection. And you can, as a teacher, you can create an educational chatbot. You put your prompt in. So in examples I've done previously in webinars, etc., I've said, you are Pierre, a French waiter in a French cafe. My students will order food and drink from you. They are working at A1 level French, so it understands the CFR level, so it gives it a guide on the sort of level that you would like. You will reply in short, simple sentences. Always be kind and polite. You don't have to say the last bit, but I think that's nice to say that. And because of the guardrails that have been put in the background with Mizu, it will mean that the Mizu will never be, inappropriate or what have you. And if you, as the user, use inappropriate language, apparently that is then flagged up for the feedback that the teacher then receives. So it's really interesting. You can either put in your answer as a text answer, or you can record your voice. So for language learning, I think that's wonderful, the way in which the students can record their voice using a desktop, laptop, mobile device, phone, etc. And then that is very accurately transcribed, and then it will then be sent to, in this example, Pierre. Pierre will then respond to that. And I have a lot of fun being a bit silly as well with the chatbot. So, for example, I'll say, could I have a white coffee and a croissant, please? And then Pierre will then give me those particular items, and then I'll finish by saying, that's fantastic. The problem is I don't have any money. Is it okay if I don't pay? And then Pierre then says, yeah, that's fine. We're just here to practice, because it knows, in inverted commas, that it is a chatbot. It's playing the role of a teacher. It's not actually a real, authentic situation. And I always show that, because I think that's important to show that. And then the student then ends the session, and then you go back to the teacher screen, refresh the page, and then you'll see that you've got a grade for the student, which the student doesn't see unless the teacher decides to show that to the student. And then if you click on that, not only do you get the full transcript of everything that the chatbot and the student has said, including the recording, so the teacher can hear everything the student has recorded from the point of view of transparency, safety, and also getting an idea of what the students have actually done with the language. And then based on that transcript, it's also generated feedback as well, which again, only the teacher sees, but the teacher can then choose whether they share that with the student. So I think from the point of view of being able to practice conversation practice and promote independence and autonomy, I think it's one of the best solutions I've ever seen for this. It's fantastic.
Then I've got to ask this because when you mentioned about it gives a grade, that in itself has some controversy behind it, because if AI can't think, how does it give a grade? And is this grade it's a hallucination? Does it affect the grades? And also, some people are saying that it gives a grade. Sometimes if you just change the name but you give the same input, it gives a different grade. Yeah. So how reliable are grades? Me personally, when I create a chatbot, and I use Poll, by the way, although it can create a grade, but I always change it into a band. So I have rubrics, right? So I change it to a band. So at least it doesn't seem so certain that, oh, this is definitely a 13 or this is definitely a 15. But I can say that, you're in band 1, move on how to get to band 2. Yes, bearing in mind that it may not actually be cognizant of what the numbers actually mean, because it is just patterns, right? What's your opinion about this?
I think you're exactly right. I think in a sense, it's a guide. It's not going to be, well, I think in relation to numbers, as we've said already, LLMs are not very good at adding things up or dealing with numbers in general. Maybe it's different with 1.0, but I think that giving it a letter grade does indicate that you're in a certain band, let's say. I think it's a really good way of thinking about it. And I agree that if you were to give exactly the same response, you may get a slightly different grade, but it gives an indication of where you're at. So let's say the difference between an A star and an A, probably it's quite close, but I don't think you would get, if you put in the same input twice, you wouldn't go from, say, an A to an F, for example. I think that what I would imagine, again, there are certain guardrails or criteria that are put in the background to give that feedback based on the transcript that's been generated. Therefore, again, I'm sure that there are some criteria that have been pre-planned, a bit like a custom GPT, as it were, that will then analyze the transcript, and then based on the content the students have put in and the different aspects of what they put in, it will then create some sort of feedback based on that. But as we know, you ask the same question to 4 different LLMs, or you just regenerate the same answer, it will give you a different answer every single time. So it's just an indication from the point of view of feedback. But I think that what it does do is it does save teachers a lot of time, and more importantly, it really promotes autonomy. So it may not be perfect. In fact, it won't be perfect. I think LLMs can never be perfect, but it's performing a very useful function in a language learning context of encouraging students to practice their speaking. Maybe if they're doing that at home, that's going to be in an environment where they feel more comfortable. They're not in a classroom situation where they're more worried about what their peers are thinking about what they're saying, etc. They can practice to their heart's content. The fact that with Mizu, again, you can have up to 50 sessions per day as well. So you could easily run this with one class, and they could have a go at doing a couple of tries if they wanted to for particular homework or what have you. I think it's just a great way of making it more risk-free, if you like, or encouraging student agency. And the more that you can do that, the more that you can make it motivating for the students to try and practice their skills, the better they will become, as we all know.
So, Joe, I'm sitting here and I am just kind of taking a lot of this in. And I'll be straight. A lot of it is way over my head, and I feel like it's going to be way over the head of a lot of our listeners and teachers in general, right? Because AI is it's exploded over the last 2 years. And I think there's still a lot of people who are hesitant to play with it at all. You've got people like me who use basic chat GPT. I've played around with like magicschool.ai, and Perplexity is one that I've recently kind of started getting into. But for me, I have more time, I think, than what a lot of teachers will end up having. And I just have that kind of affordability. But a lot of what we're talking about, or what we've been talking about so far, seems very technical and very challenging if you have never really dabbled in AI before, right? And I can see how, like, the more that you get to know it, the easier that it's going to become, and how it can make things easier for teachers as they know it. But my question really is, where would somebody begin? Where does a teacher who's scared to use AI, hesitant to use AI, hasn't really done anything because they just don't really know, like, where would you tell them to begin?
Yeah, and I think that's a great question, because I'm seeing now, a year and a half in, let's say, that you have got some people who are, if you like, a far way ahead compared to the average person, because of the fact they're really interested in this, they're exploring it in great detail, they've maybe in different LinkedIn groups, Facebook groups, on Twitter X, etc., and they want to know what's the latest thing. Like Ghazali and myself and yourself, we're having great fun talking about ChatGPT 1.0 that literally has just come out in the last couple of days, and there are going to be, I'm sure, some listeners to your podcast who will be wanting to be at the bleeding edge and want to see the latest things. But you're right that there are going to be some people who maybe have only heard of ChatGPT, for example, as the most well-known large language model, or maybe they've just had a little bit of a play. So I would say, to allay those people's fears, is that I would, if you're interested in exploring this, I would suggest that you just very, quietly in your own time, just have a bit of a play with, for example, ChatGPT. You don't even need to have an account now to use ChatGPT, or Google Gemini, etc. Although you do need an account for Google Gemini, but just to put in a simple prompt, for example, could you make a lesson plan on X, Y, and Z? This is for my students who are, let's say, 12, 13 years old. So you're giving some parameters on the topic of whatever it might be, teaching about what I did last weekend. I'd like you to use certain words. I'd like you to use certain tenses, etc., and just see what it comes up with, and then evaluate the results. Maybe make some tweaks, similar to what we were saying earlier about prompt chaining, the idea that you don't necessarily get a perfect answer first time. In fact, you almost certainly won't get a perfect answer first time, that you need to add in some corrections or say things that you don't want, some exclusions, or use words like avoid, or whenever I'm asking ChatGPT to make a Twitter thread for me, for example. I still say Twitter. To me, it's still Twitter rather than X. But I will say, no hashtags, no emojis, because I know that if I don't say that, it will automatically want to add hashtags and emojis, which I don't want in my different tweets, because you've got a limited number of characters, and I don't want that. So that I've just learnt to include that. But I would just say, start off small, just choose one idea. Certainly, you could use a tool like Magic School that you mentioned, which is what's referred to as a wrapper tool. What is meant by that, wrapper as in WRAPPER. So it's essentially using ChatGPT or some sort of language model in the background, but it's been designed to have a teacher-friendly and a student-friendly interface to make it simpler and easier for those people who are less confident with the use of large language models to get started. So I think that's a nice starting point. Those two ideas, your basic LLM, or a tool like Magic School, or EduAid as well, which is a similar type of tool. And there's a lot you can do for free in those tools. And once you become more familiar, there are other tools you could have a look at, such as Diffit that I've mentioned, such as Mizu. And I'd recommend as well my YouTube channel, which is www.youtube.com/@ as in the @ Joe Dale. And on there, there are a number of different webinars, either that I presented personally, or I'm also a member of the Association for Language Learning, which is the Subject Association for Languages, in England and Wales, but anyone can be a member. And at the start of the pandemic, we started this series called Technology and Language Teaching, or TILT for short, with my friend Helen Myers, who's the chair of the London branch of ALL. And we've done about 150 webinars during that time. From March 2020 up until now, we've done about 150. And I must say, all of those we've both done completely for free because we felt morally it was the right thing to do. And the more recent webinars that we've done, about 5 of them, have been around the use of AI. And the first couple of those 5 are literally how to show you the beginnings of ChatGPT as a beginner. So we did one in February 2023 with Julia Morris, who's a languages teacher in the southwest of England. And she did an hour going through things like creating lesson plans, creating activities, etc. And then, because there were so many people who wanted to speak as well, we did a type of show and tell segment after that, which again was an hour long, and each person had about 5 minutes. Some people couldn't appear live, so they did pre-recorded videos and sent them in. And we had people from the States, people from Hungary, from the UK, and all of that is available, a 2-hour recording, which has been watched, I think, over 1,300, 400 times or something. That's on my YouTube channel as well. And then Julia kindly came back and did a part 2, and there are other webinars there as well on use of AI. So there's a lot of support out there, and I'm more than happy for people to reach out as well to me. And in my Facebook group, second plug of the day, Language Teaching with AI, there's a lot of support there. There's regular posts from me plus other people as well. So that would be a good starting point. So there is a lot of support out there if people want to learn more, I think.
I appreciate that, because I think that's, just such a good place for people to get started so that they can start just figuring things out. And we'll definitely be dropping your YouTube channel and Facebook group into our show notes so that people have quick and easy access to all of that. So I guess my other question to go along with all that is, we know that AI can help us save some time and just speed up processes. But what role would you say AI plays in language learning, and how can that benefit students in developing language skills?
Okay, so from the teacher point of view, it can be very helpful in saving time, in generating resources, worksheets, etc. From the student point of view, and it must be said as well that for student use, that most tools, you need to be 13 plus, you need to have parental permission. So it's incumbent on schools to make sure they get that parental permission. I think it's a bit more hazy in the States, although a lot of the, what I mean by that is in the UK, we have like national guidance on this from the UK government. Likewise, in Australia, my understanding is there isn't the equivalent at the moment in the US. There may be a statewide agreement, but there's not a national agreement, I don't think, on the use of AI. And therefore, that's really, really important. But it's also incumbent on any school to have an AI policy in place for the particular teacher to carefully check the privacy policy, the terms and conditions of every website that they want to use with the students, and to make it really clear to the students they don't put personal information into the large language model. And that's why, again, I really like Mizu from that point of view. So from the point of view of the benefits of AI for student learning or language learning, I think the fact that the AI can, with certain tools, generate immediate feedback, authored for their level, I think that's really, really useful. I think the way in which you can use different tools, like simple ideas of the voice typing feature in Google Docs, or dictation in Microsoft Word, or a tool like Audio Pen AI, which allows you to record your voice, to choose the input language, and you can choose the output language as well. And what it does, it will then make a summary of what you've said in the language that you've chosen, as well as create an original transcript. So in other words, with, say, voice typing and dictation in Word, you can input your voice, you choose the language first of all, and it has a whole range of different languages. I find it interesting, actually, on that point, that there's a number of different Spanishes. It has like Mexican Spanish, Castilian Spanish, and so on and so forth. There's about 6, 7 different Spanishes. And for French, it just has French. That's it. It doesn't have Swiss French, Quebecois French, etc. So I just find that, anyway, that's another point. So you can use that for pronunciation practice, because if it does a good job in understanding what it is that you're saying and it's made a nice text version, that's great. If there are mistakes there, that could indicate gaps in knowledge or mispronunciations. And then again, with Audio Pen, what you can use it for is you can choose the input language. Let's say it could be French or it could be English, etc. You've got a whole list of different possibilities. Likewise, the output language. So the input language you choose, that will be the language of the transcript that it then generates, but it also makes a summary in the output language. So you could choose, let's say, French in French or Spanish in Spanish, and therefore you'll have the original transcript in Spanish, but you'll also get the summary. So the students could then compare the summary with the transcript. And you can do all of that for free. And in addition to that, you don't even need to have an account with Audio Pen. It will actually work without being logged in, which is a very nice feature as well. And then once it's generated the transcript and the summary, you can copy both or copy one or the other. And then you can then analyze that, paste that into another place like a Google Doc or a Word document, etc., to have that as a permanent evidence. So I think it allows the students to be more independent in the way I've talked about already. It gives them more agency, potentially with, for example, Mizu. In relation to a tool like Diffit, it allows the teacher to create more differentiated resources more easily. So it can create graded versions of different text, which can save a lot of time and meet the needs of the individual students more easily, I think. But those are a few ideas, but it just feels like we're right at the beginning of all of this and we're just working out how it can all be used. But in general, I think that it's a great time saver and it can really encourage independent practice from a student point of view. And the more independent practice students have, the more likely it is they'll be able to retain the content. And likewise, actually, with formative assessment tools as well, like quizzes, I think is amazing. Quizzes AI have added a lot of new features recently. And the way in which you can use those, for example, for creating different types of multiple choice quizzes, which are self-marked, and an Excel spreadsheet can be generated. The teacher can then see the evidence of how the students have all performed, down to the individual student. I'm sure that with AI, this sort of feedback is going to become even more personalized. That using algorithms in the background, the AI will be able to identify exactly where each student is at based on their responses. I think that's really exciting as well. But I also think, in relation to another tool which has added a lot of AI features recently, I don't know if you've explored the new features in Padlet, but I'm really excited about those. So, for example, you've got the I can't draw feature in Padlet, which is just the text to image feature, which I know there are other tools out there like Ideogram or Adobe Firefly or Microsoft Designer, which allows you to create images from text input. And of course, in languages, that's amazing for being able to create more nuanced image, bespoke images based on whatever it is you want to put into the large language model, which is just fantastic. But the new sort of magic Padlet features, I've been exploring those a lot recently, and you've got one of the options is custom board. And so, for example, I've worked out how you can create a certain prompt which will create a transcript in one column, and in the second column it will have 10 questions based on that transcript, multiple choice questions, and then you can then use that as a reading activity. You can enable commenting, so the students can interact with the each question by leaving a comment, like by leaving a letter answer, for example. But you can also edit the text from the transcript, cut it, and then use what's called Talk for Me, which is a new feature in Padlet, which allows you to generate a text-to-speech audio file from that text, and then you've turned it into a listening comprehension activity, which is just amazing. And the model of pronunciation is actually very good. I've tried it out with French and with Spanish, and it's very, very good. And then for those people that don't want the students to be able to see everyone else's answer, you can export the results as a PDF, and then you can literally select all the content, copy that, and then paste that into Brisk and turn it into a Google quiz or into a Microsoft quiz in the way that I talked about already, and then share that with the students. So they listen to the audio, which is text to speech, and then the students can then fill in the Google quiz. Likewise, actually with speaking on a similar type of prompt, you can create one column for the teacher questions, and then 30 columns for the different students, which you can call student 1, student 2, student 3, etc. And all of that can be done automatically with that prompt. And then the teacher, using the audio recorder feature, can record question 1, question 2, question 3, etc. in that first column. And then the students can then record the different answers, answer 1, answer 2, answer 3 in Padlet. But another really cool feature, I know this is getting quite techy now, Dustin, but another really cool feature is you can go to the settings option. You can scroll down to where it says custom fields. Sorry, you can go down to where it says post fields, not custom fields. I'll just say that bit again. So for example, you can go to the settings, you can scroll down to where it says post fields, you click on the post fields option, you go to the top where it says attachment, you click on that, and then you deselect all the options, and then you just select the audio recorder option. So there's a tick next to it. And by doing that, it means that when the students click on the plus icon, it will show them only the audio recorder feature as opposed to everything else. So if you just wanted to focus on the speaking, they can do that really easily. It means they could input text as well, which you can't eliminate, but they can then record their audio for practicing speaking, answering the, let's say, question 1. They would then name it answer 1, and then the teacher can then see all the different answers that the students can produce. And then it does mean that if you were to do that, because it's Padlet, the students would be able to listen to everyone else's answers. But I don't think that's a bad thing personally. So that's been some of the things that I've been playing around with and having a lot of fun in seeing how AI, for example, in Padlet and other tools, can really push the envelope. So I appreciate that what I'm saying maybe is on the cutting edge, but in a way, maybe that's what some of your listeners want to hear.
I really appreciate that you kind of brought that audio piece in, because I know, for one, we have numerous pockets throughout the United States right now that have large numbers of refugees and immigrants. So there are language barriers that have popped up in areas of the country that haven't really dealt with language barrier before. So having a tool like that where students can input their audio, I'm wondering if, like, and maybe I missed this, maybe we didn't talk about it, but with that feature in like a Padlet, for example, can students talk to it and have that then translate back over to the teacher in the same way that a teacher could input audio and have it translate over for students? Like, are there tools out there that can actually like translate language so that we can avoid this sort of like English language barrier that I know we have in so many places? Do you know?
So with Padlet, when you have recorded audio or video, or imported audio or video, it automatically creates closed captions, which I know is not exactly what you're saying, but that could certainly be a support to help students understand what it is that they are saying, or the teacher to understand what they're saying. What's quite annoying about that at the moment, although I have given some feedback to Padlet about this, is, for example, with the transcription in French, it doesn't add the accents, which is a bit infuriating, to be honest with you. But in relation to translation, I'm not sure. I'd have to go to Perplexity and say, can you translate audio and video files that are in Padlet into another language? So the honest answer is I don't know, but that makes me think of Audio Pen in the way that you could have the input language in the language of the student, which is, let's say, not English, and then the output language could be, let's say, English, so they could use that as a way of trying out or explaining what it is that they're trying to say in their own language, and then have it transcribed and translated into a different language. That could be very useful. Likewise, actually, there's a really fantastic AI tool called TurboScribe, which is one of my favorites at the moment, which for free every single day you can transcribe up to 3 files, and each file can be up to 30 minutes in length. And for example, you can either click on the microphone option in TurboScribe, and you can dictate in your language, and it will then transcribe it in that language, or you can choose to have it directly transcribed into English if you wanted to. But the whole list of languages, I think there's like 98 languages or whatever it is. There's a whole list of languages that you can transcribe into, or you can upload a video file or an audio file, as long as it's in the right format, MP3, MP4, WAV, etc. Or you can take a YouTube link and then click on the link icon in TurboScribe and then import that link. It also works with Google Drive links as well, and apparently Dropbox. I've not tried it with Dropbox or Facebook links, but I have tried it with Google Drive and with YouTube, and it works really, really well. And then once you've done that, You can also choose, there's further options. You can choose, if there's like more than one speaker, you can choose one of those options. You can either choose the number of speakers that are there, or you can choose automatically detect. And so that's really useful if you've got a dialogue and it will then say speaker 1, speaker 2, speaker 1, speaker 2. Officially, the geek in me, you'll love this, Ghazali, is speaker diarization. So that's referred to as speaker diarization, that AI can identify who is speaking each line. And then you can then download that as a Microsoft Word document, as a PDF, as a TXT file. And then you could put that into Word. You could use find and replace to replace, let's say, speaker 1 with the name of the actual speaker. That's a really easy way of doing that. And I really like the way in which you've got ChatGPT built into the interface. So you could create a transcript. You could then click on the ChatGPT option. There's like things like a detailed summary, simple summary, etc. But the prompt I normally go for is the custom prompt. And then in there, what you can do is you can say, based on the transcript, for example, create a 10 multiple choice questions at A1 level French, whatever it might be, include an answer key, and it will then do that. It will copy that to the clipboard. It then gives you the option to open ChatGPT, which it does then live from the interface. You go into ChatGPT and you literally just have to right click and click paste, so it copies it to the clipboard, and then it will then do its magic. And then once you've seen the output and you've edited and molded it in the way that you want, you can then, for example, ask it to create a downloadable Word document if you wanted to as well. So those are a few ideas I think that would really help with students who don't have English as a first language, I would imagine.
Wow. All right. So there's so much that we have learned from you today. So my final segment, this is we're going to challenge you. I've been to a lot of sharings and conferences and workshops, all right? So we have shown the power of AI and what it can do in the classroom. But we also know that there are certain educators or people who are resistant to adopting something so new and powerful. Yeah, so as Dustin know, I love lists. So I have my famous list ready, Dustin. I'm ready to go. Okay, Joe, we're gonna play a game, all right? I'm gonna give you 3 things that I always hear in conferences. People ask me, but I'm gonna ask them to you now, right? So I have 3 things to ask you. I'll ask you in order. So basically, I'll give you the first thing, the first resistant thing that they said about AI, and why they don't want to adopt it. You answer, then I'll give you the next one, then you answer, okay, and then I'll give you the third one, right? So this should be fun, right? Okay, so first thing I always hear. So pretend I'm the teacher. I don't want to use AI in the classroom because I do not want my students to use ChatGPT to copy and paste as their homework answer, for example. Then I'll end up marking 40 scripts of ChatGPT answers and they learn nothing from it. So how would you respond to this first one?
I would respond to that saying, well, AI is not going away. We need to equip our learners with what's happening right now and the different skills that they need to develop to make them ready for the workplace. If you suspect that your students have been using ChatGPT and it's not their own work because you have a good idea as a professional of their level, you could ask them to explain what it is that they've written, what they've answered. You could potentially take the text they've written and generate a multiple choice quiz using Brisk teaching that I've talked about already. If they only get 2 out of 10, then maybe it would suggest that it's not their own work and you ask them to redo it, but also explore other ways in which they can submit assignments, e.g. by using their voice to explain something, by recording themselves. And it would be very clear if they're just reading the answer from ChatGPT. You can hear that in the audio, or you ask them to create a video maybe. So I think that this is a question which people are grappling with all over the world. And the general answer seems to be that we need to think about other ways in which we can assess the students. And also, of course, for the final exam, they won't have access to AI, which they know, and therefore they will stumble if they are over-relying on AI, because in the final exam, they won't have access to that. And another idea is you could ask them to complete tasks in class with only paper and pen, for example. That would be another possibility. So that's what I would say to that one.
Awesome. That is a pass. Okay, Dustin, he passed the first question.
Okay.
All right. Second question. With AI being so powerful, can it, or I'm afraid of that it will create an over reliance in the use of those tools, such that when it's taken away from the student, they don't know what to do. And these days, exams, assessments are still pen and paper, but we are teaching using AI tools, and that doesn't translate to pen and paper exams well. So am I then doing them a disservice when they don't do, and they might not do well for their exams? How will you respond to this?
So I think that the more progressive ideas on this from teachers is that we should encourage the students to be really clear when they're using AI. So have this very sort of honest dialogue with the students, in the sense that we can ask them to say and reference that they've used AI, or in class, we could ask the AI to, for example, do an activity or create a text based on content that we've been studying. And because the AI does regularly hallucinate, we could get the students to identify if there have been hallucinations in a particular text, or particularly in relation to, say, a grammar point. If you ask it a question to create a text only using a certain tense and it makes mistakes, which I find it does do regularly, or if you ask it to create a text using certain words and it makes mistakes, to get the students to analyze what the output has been like from the AI, as a way of making them realize that, in fact, it's not perfect. We can't presume that everything it does is perfect, and that will then highlight to them the fact that it is infallible and it won't always give the right answer. There's always going to be some students who will over rely on something, in this case AI. There'll always be students who are looking for a shortcut to get their work done. But I think if we have this honest dialogue with them about the use of AI and the fact it can be used as a learning buddy, the way in which you could, for example, ask if the students are going to use AI in relation to their writing, maybe you could ask them to write it without the use of AI, and then ask the AI to give them feedback, or maybe ask the AI to create a structure for them, which they then add content to. Those sorts of uses of AI, I think, are much more constructive and promote the learning. So it's more about the journey rather than the final destination. I think that's really important. So if a student just says, okay, my teacher has given me this task, can you answer it for me, and just hand it in, there will always be some students who will do that. There will always be some students who will swear blind that it's their own work. And this is not new for language teachers. We've been grappling with language issues around Google Translate for a long time, plagiarism issues around Google Translate. But I think if we use it in a positive way, because it's not going away, as I've said already, I think that we're going to get more independence from our students and get them to develop their critical thinking skills, or their AI skills, which is incredibly important in the world that we now live in, I think, in this AI revolution that we're seeing.
Awesome. That's a perfect answer. Dustin, this guy is ChatGPT. So how do you beat ChatGPT? Okay, I've saved my best question for last. How do you beat ChatGPT? You take it out of its training, right? So I'm going to ask him a question that is totally from left field. Okay, something maybe a bit weird or whatever. But I've actually received these questions during my conferences and my workshops. Okay, so third question. Because I know you can answer pedagogical, educational question very well, but this is a question I got from one of my workshops, which was, as you know, as models get bigger, more powerful, the amount of compute that is used, the GPUs that is used, uses tons of energy, such that, you know, they say that the more you use, in fact, it could power an entire state in America, for example, for a month, I think. Yeah, and every query in ChatGPT uses up amount of water, you know, equivalent to like this mug, right? So, as a teacher, I feel that it is my moral obligation not to use AI because of its potential damage to the climate, you know, to the environment. Yeah. So, how would you respond to this?
So I think that is, again, a very valid question. I think that there's obviously now a tension between the amount of water, the amount of energy that large language models require to function, and climate change, and the way that we need to be more responsible with our resources moving forward, so we don't leave a horrendous legacy for our children and for our grandchildren. At the same time, AI, again, it's not going away. And I don't think that a lot of people necessarily are going to think about the ecological side of things, and will, if they have access to AI, they will carry on using it if they're finding that it's beneficial for them. And it's up to companies and governments, I think, actually, to put in legislation on this so that there are some sort of guardrails to ensure that we don't have companies burning through huge amounts of power and using too much water. But this is something which, lots of different stakeholders have to consider and find a solution down to the user themselves. It's not really down, well, it is down to the onus of the user, but users can't really make a huge, I can't see that users, unless there's millions and millions of them saying, okay, we're going to stop using AI, we're going to reduce our use, because I just can't see that happening. That's not in the nature of human beings. So it's got to come from the top. Governments and companies have got to take responsibility to manage this so that we're not having an adverse effect on the environment and on climate change. But this is something which is for the bigger people, not for the individuals, I think.
That's the exact answer I've written down in my research to prepare for my future workshops. I know I'm going to be facing these questions again. I did my research, and it always boils back to exactly what you said. AI is not going away. At the same time, when you look at the cons, which is the environment, does it mean that there's no pros, there's no advantage? Look at the benefit to the students, everything that you've mentioned before. So weighing those two things, it is not cut and dried. It's not all negative, and then on top of that, it hurts the environment. No, it benefits the students. It closes learning gaps. It allows students who previously did not have or don't have the money or the access to expensive tutors now can have access to a cheap one, a free one, which is AI, right, to help them in their studies. So it actually is more inclusive, right? So that is the argument for using it more, to bring inclusivity into the education system. And you're right, the question is, it is not in our hands. It is in the hands of legislations, governments, to moderate the use. If there is something that is affecting the climate, they have to do something about it in terms of legislation, right? So perfect. It's a perfect answer. Yeah. 3 out of 3.
I passed all 3. Yeah. That's amazing.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, and you got my model answer already from what I've been spending weeks, to look for this, especially that third question, because, well, I didn't know how to answer that question previously because it's climate change. I'm in the classroom. I didn't know what I did was going to affect the environment outside. But when I looked at the background of it, yes, I mean, yeah, it is worrying in the sense that the Elon Musk is building a data center of over 200,000 servers, I think, or 100,000 servers, and the amount of energy to run that and the amount of water to cool that, well, it's really immense. And with ChatGPT 1.0 just being released, with so much power, what it can do, and it's just only going to get more and more powerful. So how does this affect the environment? It's a valid question, and I expect to field those questions in my workshops as well. But I think we have the answer for that, I guess. The best one we can find.
Amazing. Well, we've been talking for well over an hour now. Maybe we need to start wrapping up. What do you think? I mean, obviously, I could talk to you guys for a long time, but we're all busy, aren't we? So maybe we need to consider how we can wrap up and come up with some sort of conclusion.
Yeah. So first of all, look, Joe, Ghazali did not get those questions from teachers. He just got them from ChatGPT. Okay. I'm just kidding.
Those are real questions.
No,
Yeah,
I
those
know.
are real questions.
I know. But in the spirit of all this AI chat, I had to throw that out there. So, Joe, no, but this has been an incredible conversation. There's been so much, some high level stuff, some very practical stuff, some easy tools that teachers can tap into and use, ways that teachers can use these tools to support students, and ways that students can use these tools in class. So I just really, really appreciate you taking the time to be here with us. As we close up, is there anything else that you would like to share about the use of AI, specifically in language classrooms?
Well, if people are interested in watching some more videos, I would recommend having a look at the Teaching English British Council videos that are the recordings of the mini event that happened on Wednesday, so literally 4 days ago. And there were 3 sessions that were recorded. I did the first session. Some of the ideas I've been talking about in this podcast were included there. And the event beat their record for the number of registrations, the best ever, which was 3,400 registrations. And already most of those videos have had 12,000, 15,000 views. So if you go to the Teaching English British Council Facebook page for those, you can find them really easily. There's a long post as well in my Facebook group as well, but I'd really recommend checking those out because the feedback has been amazing, and it could be a nice starting point, or some of the ideas are, as I've said, I've talked about in this podcast. And so for those people looking for the next level ideas, then that would be a useful starting point. And if you want to connect with me, I'm at Joe Dale on Twitter X. I'm on LinkedIn, just Joe Dale on LinkedIn. I've got my Facebook group and my YouTube channel as well. So there's lots of places in which you can connect with me. And if you like the sound of what I've been saying and you'd like to ask me to do webinars, etc., or even come face to face wherever you are in the world, then just let me know and we can have a chat about that. That'd be amazing.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much for being with us today, for sharing all of the knowledge that you have shared with us, your insights and your experiences. It's just incredible. And it's just been a really informative discussion. So thank you so much. So everybody, all of our listeners, please be sure to check out Joe's work. We will drop all of the things that we can into the show notes so that you have quick access. And then don't forget to subscribe to Teachers Talkin', especially if you've enjoyed this episode. We have a whole first season, so it's exciting to be back here into our second season. So subscribe to us anywhere you are listening to podcasts, and don't forget to rate and review and share, because we love to support teachers around the world. And if you would like to be a guest on Teachers Talkin', definitely reach out to us, because we are looking to bring in all sorts of educators and teachers and leaders from around the world so that we can continue to talk about topics that will benefit and support you. So thank you, Joe Ghazali. Thank you. And thank you, listeners. We will see you in the next episode.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Take care.